It's CPAC now time, America Uncanceled. Yes, it's just me today, Mercedes Schlapp. My sweet husband got way too busy and could not make it, so you're stuck with me. But we have some fabulous guests tonight. We've got Lila Rose, who's going to be talking about her new book. She is the founder of Live Action, a staunch supporter and leader of the pro-life movement. And joining me now is our chairman of the Texas Republican Party, who's going to give us all the secrets as to how to keep Texas red and the country, turn the country red, and former member of Congress and retired Army Lieutenant Colonel, the great Allen West. Thank you for joining me, sir. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, Mercedes, and thank you for having me. It's really special to be with you all.
Well, we thank you for joining us. We've got this big event coming to Texas. Are you ready for us? It's all the conservatives. I know you have a lot of them in Texas, but they're coming from all across the country.
Absolutely. Bring them on here to the Lone Star State. We'll welcome them with open arms.
So let me ask you first, because I remember when it was the 2020 election, I know we don't want to be talking about that too much because it was tough. There was all this talk that Texas was, they wouldn't even call it like a purple state. I think they put it like in the pink category, which means it could go either way. Did you ever sense that that Texas was gonna vote for Joe Biden?
No, I mean, we were quite shocked that there were quite a few people that did vote for Joe Biden, especially when you understood that he wanted to decimate the oil and gas industry. But what we did was we took our message, the principal conservative message of our Judeo-Christian faith heritage, our strong families, small business entrepreneurship, good quality education, service to the nation, and individual responsibility, rights and freedoms to all communities. And what we saw, as you well know, is that President Trump had the largest amount of support from the minority electorate body in the United States of America in the past 60 years for a Republican. And we were very successful in the Rio Grande Valley. As a matter of fact, you had Zapata County, a county down in the Rio Grande Valley. It had never been red in 100 years, and it changed and went to red. So we're going to continue to build on that success and get our message out there all across Texas, all across these communities that are now seeing the failure of the Biden policies.
And let me ask you, because obviously in Texas, we saw also a shift with minority voters, especially with Hispanics, where the Republicans gained ground on with the Hispanics. This obviously was shocking, I think, for the Democrats. What was the winning message in bringing Hispanics and minorities on board?
Well, Mercedes, as you very well know, with the Cuban American heritage background, is that so many people have come from these failed countries in Latin America, and they don't want to go back to what they have fled, the socialist policies, and especially in the Rio Grande Valley, they don't want to see the cartels running the show down there along the valley. They want to have closed borders because it's all about their safety and security. They want to have better education opportunities. They want to have better employment opportunities. In the Trump administration, you saw that unemployment record historic lows in the Black and Hispanic community. So all we have to do is just get out there and engage people and consistently tell our story, tell our message, and they will be won over to it.
Let me ask you, because obviously you brought up the border crisis. I think this is going to be one of the biggest political issues going into the 2022 midterm elections. Has Kamala Harris shown up to the border?
Oh, absolutely not. Her nor Joe Biden. And so they have completely disregarded and dismissed this. And people are paying attention and people are seeing that. But we have got to have principled conservatives here in the state of Texas that realize that when you have an abdication of the duties and responsibilities of the federal government, the state of Texas has to step up and secure the border itself.
And so, I think also one of the things you're seeing is Joe Biden, as such a weak president, he really hasn't. He says don't cross the border, but I find like it's like the weakest response possible. It's like he's winking, going, yeah, but come in. Let our viewers know, how bad is it right now at the border?
Well, it's incredibly bad. You have counties along the Rio Grande Valley area, like Kinney County, that has declared a state of emergency itself. even though we don't see that coming from the state and we don't see that coming from the federal government. We have people that are very concerned about the fact that their properties are being destroyed. I have friends that have told me that at night they can hear people that have broken into their house and they're rummaging through their kitchens, people waking up and finding folks in their barns. We know the recent story of the 5 little girls that was found by a ranger just out in the middle of the open field. Just thank God that they were not attacked and killed by some rabid animal. So these are real stories, and we can see the video. And the fact that they're trying to dismiss it is unconscionable. And remember, Mercedes, that Texas is the #1 state in the United States of America for human and sex trafficking. So why would Joe Biden and Kamala Harris be supporting human and sex trafficking and supporting the cartels?
That's a great point. I think that, the more we get to talk about the fact that it is the cartels and the human traffickers who are profiting from the border, I think it's such an important message. And the sad thing is that it really impacts Texas, but it does impact other states across the country, because they're taking these children from places like Texas, taking them to Iowa or Minnesota and these other states. So really, I think the message needs to be all states need to be very concerned about the border crisis. Your thoughts?
Yes, you're absolutely right. You see a complete undermining of the United States of America as a constitutional republic, as a sovereign nation. And it's not just the human trafficking, and we're not just talking about children, we're talking about adults as well. But think about the drug trafficking that is coming across this border and being disseminated all across the United States of America. So again, I do not understand why the president of the United States of America and the vice president will be supporting illegal activity, being it the drug trade, human and sex trafficking, and things that are absolutely reprehensible.
I know one of the issues you all have, with COVID that I think many of these states had to deal with is the mail-in ballots. I know that Texas has taken some action to make sure that there would be voter verification, something that the left calls voting restrictions. I think it's common sense. You got to get on a plane. You got to show voting ID. You're going to go vote, an identification. You're going to go vote. You're going to show a voter ID. How important is it to safeguard these elections moving forward?
Well, it is absolutely important. And if you go back to, I think about October, maybe late September of last year, the United States Supreme Court ruled against the South Carolina Democrat Party that did not want to have signature verification on mail-in ballots. So obviously this has already been established, and no one condemned and castigated the Supreme Court as being white supremacists and racist or producing voter suppression. I find it as a black man very condescending and offensive that the left does not believe that I'm smart enough to be able to get a photo ID to be able to go out and vote, because I have to catch a plane to go to El Paso tomorrow on Friday. And guess what? I will have my picture ID. And if you want to talk about the party of systemic racism, the party of voter suppression, it is the Democrat Party who created the Ku Klux Klan years ago for one simple reason: to enact voter suppression against the black electorate, along with poll taxes, literacy tests, and other things that, again, are just condescending and offensive for them to think that we're not going to remember history.
So shifting gears here, we know obviously the situation that's happening in Israel between the Hamas terrorist organization and Israel. Israel obviously is defending their country. But we've recently seen that Black Lives Matter, they stand in solidarity with the Palestinians. They're in essence supporting the Hamas terrorist organization. So I had tweeted out, I'm wondering if the woke corporations will stand up against BLM for their allegiance to Hamas terrorists. Why is this connection happening between Black Lives Matter and these Hamas terrorists and the Palestinians?
Well, Black Lives Matter is a Marxist group. They're a progressive socialist organization. They really don't care about what's happening in the black community. The #1 issue in the black community is fatherlessness, and then the gang violence that we see every single weekend. And so it is very simple for me to realize that as a Marxist organization, they're going to align with Islamic jihadists against the #1 ally that we have in the Middle East. But think about this, Mercedes. You were there as the communications director in the Trump administration. We had none of this for 4 years when there was Donald Trump sitting in the White House. And now all of a sudden, when you get Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, the Islamic jihadists and all of these people feel emboldened when you start talking about going back into the Iranian nuclear agreement, when you start once again sending money back over to the Palestinian Authority. Guess where that money went to? To pay for the rockets that are being fired out of Gaza into Israel. And so I don't know why anyone would align themselves with a Marxist organization like Black Lives Matter. And these corporations that call themselves woke, they need to really be awakened now.
Great point. In Texas, we're seeing this constitutional carry bill. Give us an update on what's going to happen with this bill. I'm hearing it's been kind of stuck.
Yeah, it's very interesting that Texas does not have constitutional carry, which means that if you pass the ATF background check 4473, that weapon is yours to own and to carry. You still have to go out and get a permission slip from the government. You have to pay a fee to get a permit to carry. If you want a permit to carry, that's okay for reciprocity with other states, but no one should keep you from having your Second Amendment right. We had a great bill that had bipartisan support, HB 1927 in the Texas State House. It went over to the Texas State Senate. And it doesn't appear that Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick is a big fan of constitutional carry because they put some very damaging amendments onto that bill and it had to go back to the House. Now that bill is in what we call a conference committee. And of course, that means that the left and some of these Democrats are going to get the opportunity to maybe undermine constitutional carry in Texas. There are 20 other states in the United States of America that has constitutional carry. And it is quite disconcerting to people in Texas to know that Bernie Sanders in Vermont has constitutional carry and we don't in the great state of Texas.
That's insane. I didn't know that, Colonel. I didn't realize that that was the case. That's fascinating. You think Texas would be the first one to have it. What do you think are the dynamics? I don't get it, but like in Texas, why is it? I mean, it's something that that state has been so pro Second Amendment. What's the delay? What do you think the political tactics are?
Well, for whatever reason, I can't understand when we have an 83 to 67 majority of Republicans in the Texas State House, 18 to 13 in the Texas State Senate. This should have been very easy. It is one of the legislative priorities that we have with the Republican Party of Texas. And the fact that we are 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks away from the end of our legislative session and constitutional carry hasn't passed, it is unconscionable what is happening. And I think that that's the big concern. There are people that call themselves Republicans, but are they truly constitutional conservatives? That's the real question to ask.
What's your gut when it comes to the 2022 midterm elections? Obviously, right now, it's still so far away. But what's your sense in terms of the issues that are going to matter to make sure that the Republicans win the majority?
Well, I think the biggest issue is that in 4 months, look at what has happened in the United States of America. We have gone to having an incredible economy. We've gone from being energy independent to energy dependent. People sitting in gas lines, $7 gas prices in some places, the commodity prices that are going up. And so if you look at history, Bill Clinton, his first midterm election cycle, lost 54 seats. That was the contract with America. Barack Obama in 2010 lost 63 congressional seats. So they know what is coming for them. And that's why, Mercedes, they're trying to push through this HR1 S1, this nationalization of elections under the Democrats, because they know what's going to happen to them coming up. And that's why they're trying to bully Republicans into not passing strong election integrity laws.
Well, I think it's time for Speaker Pelosi to retire, and quite frankly, for Senator Schumer to retire as well. But, I think there's been this great news that's happened in your family. You're a granddad, huh? There's a new baby.
Yeah.
We have the cutest picture of you and the baby. We'll put it up.
Yeah. Thanks so much. On Tuesday night, Jackson Bernard was born, and I tell you what, 6 pounds, 7 ounces. And I've already given him his nickname. His nickname is Trooper. Because I really just want to love on him and raise him up to be a strong American citizen. And that's why we fight, Mercedes. We fight for our children. We fight for our grandchildren to pass on a better America than what we had ourselves.
Well, sir, you have been fighting for America for such a long time. You served in our armed forces. You served in the House of Representatives. Now you put on this political hat as Republican chairman of Texas, which is such an important job. What message do you send to your fellow Republican chairmen in these states that are the tough states to win?
Well, I think that if you do as Ronald Reagan did, you take a principled conservative message out to the people, they will support it. There was only one
Yeah.
state that never voted for Ronald Reagan, that was Minnesota. I don't know what's going on with those folks. If they it's too cold up there, they run around calling themselves Vikings or whatever. But the bottom line is that Ronald Reagan's message resonated across the entire United States of America. And that's what people are looking for, are those principled constitutional conservatives.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to your point that we teach our children, our grandchildren, why America is the greatest country in the world, why we have to fight for our freedoms, why those men and women in uniform are out there making sure that our country is safe. And so I have to tell you, Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, you are a treasure. You are an American treasure. We thank you for your incredible service. We are so looking forward to seeing you at CPAC in Texas. It's going to be a full house. And remember, to all of you, go register now. Go to conservative.org. Registration is up and running, and you need to make sure you get your tickets. I'm going to tell you, it's going to sell fast, and we're going to have incredible guests, including Alan West. Sir, thank you so much for joining CPAC now, and we're going to see you in Dallas, Texas.
My pleasure, Mercedes. Look forward to seeing you in July.
Thank you so much, and stay tuned. We've got Lila Rose joining us, founder of Live Action. Welcome back to CPAC Now. I have the great honor of introducing you to one of our most outstanding conservative women leaders, someone who has been fighting and speaking up to protect the lives of the unborn babies. It's an issue that's very close to my heart. And now, it's great to be able to see Lila Rose's career continue to expand. And Lila, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Mercedes. Great to be on with another amazing activist and leader. And we were just talking about kids, and I aspire. You've got 5, and we're on 2 now. So living the conservative family dream.
Okay, let me give you a hint. Okay, it does get easier at some point, but it's not going to get easier. So you said you have Peter 17 months.
Yes.
And then the second baby's on
the way.
His or her way. Then but I got to tell you something. It's like pure insanity when you have like the toddler and the baby. Okay.
I've heard. So we're ready. We're I guess you can never be ready, but we're bracing ourselves.
Right. But you know what's the lesson, Lila Rose, is that that you really can do it, all, like, in the sense, I know, there's always that feminist quote of, can women do it all? And I really do feel that if you do put God in the center of your life and you wrap it around your family, and, work is definitely part of, I know it's like for you, very important in your vocation, that you really live a very fulfilling life. What message do you feel that you share? Like when you mentor these younger, they'd have to be younger than you, but younger girls, younger women, about living this fulfilling life?
Well, first, I would say the danger of comparison. We should admire other women, but ultimately we have to really pray and soul search for what are we called to, because everyone is called to that fulfilling life in a different way. And if you're called to be married and be a mother, then you might be called to do a lot of work outside and around the home, or you might feel that that's not the season for you and you want to actually be more of a full-time homemaker. So there's not like a right or wrong, and I think that's important, and that's where comparison can be challenging and even detrimental. But I will say, for those that are doing the work and raising the kids and managing the home and all these things, it is possible. It just takes a village, and I'm not doing this solo. I have people helping me. I have my husband who's really engaged. And so I also think it's important that we don't make it look like it is possible to be a one-woman army, because we need each other. And that's also where everybody's in a different place in their life, and they have to make the decisions that are best, like you say, putting God first, husband, kids, and then trying to do that service work and that other work around.
So that's great, because I got to tell you something. Matt Schlapp did not know how to handle the newborn phase. He would look at that baby that would be wailing and pooped all over the diaper and be like, all right, here, honey, here you go.
Oh, no.
Yeah, he does much
He's paying
better.
You back, though, right?
What? Say that again?
He's paying you back, though, right? I mean, you did the newborns. He's got to do something else.
He does much better, I have to say, with like the middle school age kids and the high schoolers, because then they go to him for advice. They don't really want to hear it from mom. They're like, I don't know, dad, don't tell mom. I'm coming to you for advice. So, it does, the roles are very important, but you came from you come from a very big family. I just read about one of your sister's names. Her name is Katerina, which is actually one of my daughter's names as well. So tell me about this experience about growing up in this big family. You talk about this in your book, Fighting for Life, Becoming a Force for Change in a Wounded World.
Sure. Well, it definitely taught me the power and importance of family early on, which I'm so grateful for. And I talk a lot in Fighting for Life in the book about the importance of family and, the family we're born into and then the families we may create. And for me, I was blessed. I have 7 siblings. My parents were really, they weren't activists in the sense that I became one later on, but they were definitely countercultural because of having so many kids. And we went to church on Sundays, raised evangelical. And there was this very pro-life ethic because the beauty of kids was just part of how we lived. And we had ultrasound pictures on the fridge all the time. So it really set me up to have this deep connection to kids and want to protect kids because I was the oldest girl in the family. And it also set me up for, I think, the work I would do with live action, starting live action as a teenager, because I had this beautiful example of the value of life just in how I was raised.
Right. And it was interesting in the book you talk about that you opened up this other book called A Handbook for Abortions, and it really left an impression on you. What was you were what, 9 years old at the time?
Yes.
Can you imagine 9-year-old being exposed to that? How do you, talk about that experience?
Well, kids are smart, and I wanted to learn a lot growing up. I mean, I loved reading. I was a bookworm. I was always reading. So this particular book would be a turning point in my life because, I was learning. Kids have that first moment of learning about evil in the world. For some, it's because of evil done to them, which is so tragic, or they just see an injustice, and they kind of sense this is wrong. Kids have that moral compass already. And so for me, when I first found out about abortion, reading this book, and it was kind of this history book, but it actually had an insert, Mercedes, with images where you could actually see photographs of abortion victims. So you see in the first trimester this beautifully formed, newly created life. You see the humanity, arms, legs, face, that's killed by the suction first trimester abortion. And I remember looking at that image for the first time, and I just knew abortion was wrong. I mean, it's so clear without the sort of rhetoric or the politics. If you just see this is a human being, a child that's been killed. And I was just heartbroken by it. I wanted to learn more. As I got older, I was learning about a lot of other issues, but I kept coming back to the issue of abortion because I read Mother Teresa's writings, and she called abortion the greatest destroyer of peace. She said the greatest destroyer of peace in the world is abortion. And she says, in a nation where a mother can kill her own child, what is left but for you or for me to kill one another? And you just look at the death toll of abortion. I mean, the numbers, almost 1 million a year right now. And if we kill our children, how can we have peace? How can we have justice in our society? The sheer death toll makes it the biggest cause of death. The leading cause of death in America is abortion. So that inspired and convicted me that this is the fight. There's a lot of issues to care about. There's a lot of, political debates happening, but how we care for our kids defines us. And so this is what I wanted to dedicate my work to.
So what do you think have been the biggest challenges thus far that you faced in terms of, taking on this cause, especially in today's society where you've seen the Democrat Party and those in the liberal media be advocates for destroying a baby's life, for being extreme on the issue of abortion?
Well, I think the misinformation, the constant lies, or lack of truth, just education on abortion is really exhausting. I mean, you look at, I know you're passionate about this too, and CPAC, calls it out regularly, but just the lies coming from most mainstream media. They either don't cover the truth about abortion, or they just think, oh yeah, being pro-abortion is the way to go. That's pro-woman. And this paradigm that so many institutions have accepted in our society, that to be pro-woman, for the woman, like a feminist or an advocate for women's rights, you have to be for abortion, killing her children, killing her right to kill a child. How did we get here? How did we get here to the point where your right to kill your child defines how empowered you are as a woman? I mean, it's such an insult to everything that I think makes a woman strong, which is our ability to love and nurture and bring life into the world. That's what makes women different from men, is that ability to actually nurture a life into existence. And so I think that has been the biggest obstacle, is just, tackling that lie that my other fellow young women are being told every day, in universities, news media, entertainment media, basically to be popular, like in with the cool crowd today, you have to be pro-abortion. And so we're trying to change that, because it needs to change, and it is changing. But it just has been, I think, really, and I think that there's a lot of other challenges with that, fighting for an unpopular cause. You're not going to get kudos typically for being a pro-life activist. So when I'm encouraging other young people, they're afraid sometimes what their friends will say, right? I mean, they're afraid of what their teachers will say. Right. And so giving them the courage that actually you're not alone. There's a lot that agree with you, but all the lies make it look like that's not the case, has been part of the strategy to encourage other people to stand up.
Lila, let me ask you, what needs to happen to basically get rid of Planned Parenthood?
Okay, so I mean, they're the biggest abortion chain. They get over $500 million in taxpayer money. They're going to get much more under this administration. And what needs to change fundamentally, and I talk about this in Fighting for Life, is our politics won't change until our people change. The political pendulum keeps swinging, right? It goes Bush to Obama to Trump, now Biden, hopefully back away from Biden to, I don't know, Ron DeSantis 2024 or whatever we'll get. But that pendulum, it needs to stay on the side of justice. And it's not been staying on the side of justice, on the side of protecting preborn life. So to do that, there has to be deeper cultural change that happens. And to do that, education is key. And so that's why we focus at Live Action on education. And I think if people just know the truth about abortion, if they're more educated on what it means to be human and the value of human life, and also if we change our mindset on sex and relationships, that has to be a shift that happens. And we encourage young people to have living by example, that, listen, you don't just sleep around, that sex involves commitment and love, and even kids, it can lead to life. And that's not a bad thing. We recombine the purpose of sex. I think that's the change that's needed. So that's what we work on. And here's the good news. Minds do change on abortion. Minds do change on lifestyle and how you have your relationships, because abortion, sex, hookup relationships, that lifestyle, it doesn't make people happy. Ultimately, it's not a happiness creator for people.
No, that is so true. And, it's, what is it? eHarmony and Tinder and all those places makes it very interesting. But, but to be, and I understand what you're saying, that it is about changing the people, making sure the people get educated. At the same time, it's very, very clear that it is the Republican Party that stands on the side of life, that stands on the side of the unborn. The Democrat Party continues to fail the pro-life movement. In fact, I don't even know how there's any pro-life Democrats left in the party. I think they've been wanting to be kicked out of the party because the Democrats have gotten so extreme. And President Trump has been the strongest pro-life leader that I've seen, at least in my lifetime, in terms of pushing these policies that have really, really supported the pro-life movement. But what we've also seen is in variety number of these states, including Texas and Idaho, these Republican governors are signing the heartbeat bill, which we know in Texas it becomes law in September. Tell us about what you think this will do in helping the pro-life movement.
It's awesome, and you're right. It is. That's the tragedy of this injustice: is you have a whole party, the Democratic Party, that's super pro-abortion, abortion till birth, taxpayer funded, and then the Republicans are the ones saying no. That's not the way to go. And we've seen this huge rush of pro-life legislation in the last 2 years. Planned Parenthood's research arm was saying this is the worst, unprecedented attacks, because we've had 600 pro-life bills in the last 2 years at the state level, dozens of which have passed, and one just passed yesterday, and Texas Governor Abbott signed the heartbeat bill, like you just said. And this is tremendous momentum for the pro-life movement, because it means that, they're sending a signal to the federal government, to the Supreme Court, but they're saying, in my state, we don't want to permit killing children after a heartbeat can be detected. Now, of course, right. I would say don't kill any child, but that virtually eradicates all or nearly all abortions, because that's at 7 weeks, about 7 weeks, you're banning abortion. So that's an incredible step forward. Is it going to be constitutionally challenged? Yes, because you have these terrible, unjust Supreme Court cases that I think are unconstitutional. Roe v. Wade, Doe v. Bolton, Casey v. Planned Parenthood. But that's why I'm hopeful that with President Trump's new appointees on the court, we may have a shot at chipping away at some of those unjust Supreme Court rulings so that folks like Governor Abbott of Texas can actually protect the citizens in his state, protect the preborn children in his state, and protect the women in his state from the just savagery of the abortion industry of Planned Parenthood.
So real quick on the Supreme Court, we know that they're set to hear the Mississippi abortion bill case. This is a big deal because we know that people are saying it's as big as like a Roe v. Wade case. What are your expectations? What do you think could happen there?
So you're right, it's a huge case. Mississippi has tried to ban abortion after 15 weeks. And, the district court said you can't do that because you're not allowed to ban abortions in the second trimester because of these Supreme Court precedents. Here's the reality. No one even knows what Roe v. Wade means. When you do polling, most Americans, they're like, yeah, we support Supreme Court decisions, but no one actually can say, and legal scholars are like, we don't even know because it's bad law. It was poorly decided. It hinged on this fiction that we don't know whether the child in the womb is a child, like the scientific cluelessness, about the genesis of human life. So I think it's lined up. If the justices want to be courageous and intellectually honest, they could do something definitive and just say, listen, the state has an interest in protecting the rights of the preborn because they're human beings just like anyone else in the state. They're people just like anyone else in the state. So that's the ideal scenario, and that would undo Roe. It would undo all this junk. What could happen is they chip away. So they say, well, Mississippi does have the right to do this for XYZ reasons, but they don't go all the way in establishing the personhood of the child. So, we'll see. But what we are signaling to the court is, be intellectually honest here, be bold, do the right thing, the constitutionally correct thing to acknowledge the right to life of all people. Under the 14th Amendment, equal protection. The state has the job to not interfere with, our right to live. You have to protect our right to live as citizens and do the right thing. So we'll see. And I'm hopeful at least we're going to get something. We're going to get some kind of progress.
Well, I got to tell you, where all eyes are going to be on the Supreme Court in September. Obviously, we ask all of you to, pray very much, hope that the justices make the right choice in order to protect the unborn. One more thing, I just want to wrap up here. On your book, what message do you want to leave those who are interested in the work that you're doing and this book that you've written?
So the ultimate message of Fighting for Life is you were born, each of us are born at this time in human history for a particular reason. And part of that is to stand up and speak out against injustice and fight for the causes of the day that matter the most, even if they're unpopular. And it's designed to be that handbook for how to do that using, my mistakes, my struggles, my successes over the last 15 years and other stories. So my message would be, you're called, this is a fight for all of us. The country needs you, and you have what it takes. God has given you the gifts. He's given you certain experiences. And so I hope that you can find the inspiration to take that first step of getting in the fight, or if you're already in the fight, take that next step, keep going, because you're needed, and together we can change this country for the better.
Well, I got to tell you, that was so beautifully said. And yes, you were born for this time, Lila Rose, and thank you so much for the incredible work that you are doing. Where can people buy your book?
Thank you, Mercedes. So Fighting for Life is everywhere you get your books, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever, and it's also at liveaction.org where you can follow along with what we're up to. And I'm also talking about it and other topics on my podcast, The Lila Rose Show. So check it out, and I hope you enjoy.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And remember, you can buy Fighting for Life, Becoming a Force for Change in a Wounded World by Lila Rose. Thank you so much for joining us on CPAC Now.